Welcome back to another Android box review. This was the PROBOX2 AVA and this was sent in via W2COMP EU. That's a company that sells Android boxes, and this one looked pretty interesting because it's not just an Android box, it's a HD recorder as well. So we're just going to scan through some of the basic features. Quad core, 2 gig of RAM, 16 gig of storage, but we have that picture-in-picture mode as well. So this is quite an interesting box, at least in terms of what you can do with it, and this will list out some of the features that you get. You have dual band Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4 is included, you also have Miracast as well, and you have that HDMI input, which is a key feature, as well as the option to fit a 2.5-inch hard drive. So looking at the box, looks basically double the size of a normal box. That's to accommodate the extra hard drive that you can fit if you want. You have a front display on it as well, and on the side you can see we have an SD card, USB 2 and a USB 3 port. Going around the back we have the HDMI output. There's the input if you want to record from a source, a wired Ethernet connection, a digital output, the power input, and there's an antenna mount there. You do get the antenna with this. It's quite a comprehensive bundle, so I'll just fit that into the box. I will show you the extras that you get as well. Now on the underside it does have a soft touch finish. It also has a button for firmware update. That's probably just for the reset. Quite well ventilated on this box, and I'll slide open the cover, and this is where you can fit the 2.5-inch hard drive. It takes up to 9.5 millimeters in thickness, so you can fit the slightly larger hard drives to that. I've got a solid state drive here, so I'm just going to test that just by putting that inside. Just make sure you line it up and then just click it in. It's quite a firm fit, so you do need to give a bit of pressure if you want to ever remove that from the box. But that is quite a unique feature, so you can use this for recording as well as putting your own media files on it. Now the standard remote that you get is pretty much the bog standard remote that comes with a lot of Android boxes. It's passable, it does the job, it takes 2 AAA batteries, but I'm slightly disappointed that they didn't include a all-in-one remote, because you get the Plus remote here. You can also get this box without the Plus remote. Now this is a gamepad. It has the gyroscope sensor, you have the dongle to use it, and it also has a microphone that you can use for Skype, and it's an air mouse as well. So it would have been nice if they could have included all of that in one single remote, but I do like the Plus remote, Remote Plus, because you can, not just for the gamepad feature, but it is very useful to have that, particularly if you're going to be using Skype, and the air mouse function is good enough for most people with the Android boxes. This takes the same 2 AAA batteries, and you have the HDMI cable and a UK mains adapter with this. This is a 12-volt adapter, so make sure you don't plug in another one by accident. Now the Remote Plus has a lot of good features to it. You have an accelerometer, gyroscope, you have built-in microphone for audio chat, and this is the user manual on that, just to give you an overview of it. It's very simple to operate. You have a mode switching button there, so you can switch between the air mouse and the gaming mode, and you can also use it just for navigating on the box with the directional pad, or in the air mouse mode just by moving it around and then selecting what you want. The user manual on this is good. It's very clear and easy to read, so you're not going to have any trouble getting this up and running. Onto the main instruction book for the Android box, you can see very clearly laid out with the large text and diagrams just about the setup. Very straightforward. It's worth having this included because not everyone has used an Android box, so you want to be able to get up and running fairly quickly. Also shows you about connecting to the internet. It's definitely better than most of the Android boxes that I get in, and it goes through the picture-in-picture function, which we will take a look at later on, and the recording function as well. Now when you boot this up, you'll see the time come up after you've booted, and this is the booting screen. It's fairly quick to boot up with this box, and we get an animation function come up. What you do get once you've done the first time run with this is a screen, so you can set up and pick your language. You can also connect to the Wi-Fi as well, and there is a DMCA notice regarding copyright material and recording. They're just covering themselves on that. There was a firmware update for this box, so that I installed that and I ran it with that. Now when you get onto the main screen, you'll see that it's quite a clean layout on this box. It's certainly one of the cleaner looking ones that I've used. It's fairly minimal in terms of the design, but I think it works quite well. It's easy to navigate, and you have the shortcuts available for most of the apps that you need. Kodi is installed on this box. It's not exactly the latest version, but there aren't any streams in there, so you're going to have to go in and adjust that yourself. You do have quite a few shortcuts where you can put the apps of your choice in there, such as the movie, TV, music. There's quite a few, perhaps more than I would use myself. There's the favourite ones just showing on the screen there, but at least you have access to any of the apps that you want to segment them off into games, etc. like that. And across the bar at the bottom there, you can customise that and put the shortcuts to apps there. That's pretty much standard on an Android box. I'm happy enough with the layout in terms of the general usage. It's not the prettiest looking home screen on an Android box, but it's functional, which is probably the most important factor for me, so you can get to everything easily. You do have a file explorer, and you can also make some adjustments along the bottom there. You can see you have the status indicator for the Wi-Fi. If you go into the settings, and if you dive into the Realtek settings, that takes you into the main menu systems that you normally get on an Android device. That gives you the extensive options that you have there. You probably won't need to touch most of those, but there are a few that are worth looking at, such as the storage. You can see that the SSD that I've put in is listed as a USB drive. It will prompt you to format that as well when you put that inside. And you've got the HDMI content encryption functions. Now I will get onto that later on. I leave it off. It's entirely up to yourself what you do with that. That's just going to give you a bit more flexibility, and that's just the version of the HDMI. We're going to the About section. I did do the update before I started the review, so it's been updated to the latest version, so it was good to see that they did at least have an update straight out of the box. And the apps that you get, pretty basic, not too many. You get a few like Netflix, standard apps, but you do get the Kodi, and you also have the Miracast as well, and that works quite well. Now if you go into the HDMI in section, you will see here we have a very simple screen which allows you to start the picture-in-picture. There's a broadcast option, which means you can attach to another device to broadcast that. You can go into the resolution set from Full HD down to 640 by 480, and you have a choice of two file formats. I usually use the MP4. You can also pick where you store it. So in this case I have an SD card fitted because I'll take the footage out of this. It's just easy to use that, or I can use a SATA drive. Now you do have some other options with this. You can specify a start and finish time, so in other words a recording date to record from the HDMI, so that perhaps for something like a satellite that would work quite well if you have the input put into there. And you can also pick whether or not you want to have any audio recorded. It doesn't seem very useful, but for example if I was recording an Android box, which I did with my last video, you can see me starting the recording now. I don't need the sound, I just need the vision from that, so that's a reasonable option to have included. And as far as the performance goes, it's exactly as you would expect. The picture quality is quite clear, and you can also use the picture-in-picture mode, which is something I perhaps would use less, but if you are multitasking such as this, you can have the picture down there in the screen, but you can also move it around. So if it gets in the way of something, you can move the box around so that you have a clear view of the screen. I didn't see if there was an option to resize it, but still, as it is, it could be quite useful. Perhaps you're playing a game, you want to keep an eye on something else. I'm not very good at multitasking, I'll be honest, so I generally wouldn't use that, but it's a nice feature to have included. Now, and what I'm doing is using a laptop with the HDMI input from that, and I'm playing it back and recording it on the device. You're able to see that there's a timer up there in the corner with the record letting you know that it is recording, so you can actually do this with the full screen and see what you're doing. So I'd find that quite useful myself. You also have, this is the full HD that I'm recording at 30 frames a second, and the file size is about 116 megabytes, and that was just over 3.5 minutes. So it gives you an idea of the file compression. The video quality coming out of this, I found it to be very good. Didn't see any obvious artifacts or issues, and I'm just ejecting the SD card at the bottom. Play Store is working fine. There's no problems at all with that. So you can install apps from that, or you can use another source if you wish. You do have a power off button for both the plus remote and the standard remote as well. You see there's an icon on the right hand side. You can switch between displays if you have a different launcher included, so you have an option to do that. I'm now playing it with the Plus remote for the gaming, and it worked actually quite well with the gyroscope sensor. Most of the games it worked fine on. I didn't have too many problems apart from Real Racing, couldn't get it to work on that. I've put a DVD into the laptop now, but I'm not going to play it for obvious reasons, and this is footage that is captured by the recording function off of the laptop. I'm just going through the menu screens, the settings on a Windows 10 HDMI output on the laptop, and you'll see I'm pretty happy with the quality. Certainly would be useful to me because I'd be able to record functions from that without any problems regarding exposure. You can see that I'm running a benchmark test now, and this is the multi-core score of just under 1700, so it did pretty well, similar to the S905X chipset in terms of the performance there. And onto the 3D test. This just runs a benchmark to test the frames per second performance, just to see how it stacked up, and it did quite well, just under 2000 points, average frames per second of 27.7. This is a Sky Castle demonstration. Again, it's rendering here, quite heavy workload for the box to do, and it's done a lot better than the last Android box that I tested, which was stuttering a lot. So this is quite good for gaming. What I would say is, if you are a hardcore gamer, there are better boxes for that. The main appeal for this is going to be using it for the record function. Wi-Fi speeds also very good, one of the better download speeds that I've had. So that recording function is critical really to the box, I think, for the appeal, and possibly the picture-in-picture. Be able to see some of the specs on the device. And this particular box is rooted, so you do have root access to it. Didn't see any problems at all with the streaming. It's very smooth, no issues to report, good Wi-Fi reception as I previously mentioned. I will be asked, can you record encrypted content? And I didn't see anything that would stop me doing that. Whether you should do that or not, it's entirely up to yourself, but it's a question I will be asked, so that's my response. Yes, you can. I didn't see any problems recording from different sources from HDMI. Obviously, the appeal of this is going to be that aspect, perhaps for gaming, from PlayStation, Xbox, something like that, but you could also hook up a satellite to this as well if you wanted to. So that's a pretty strong point for the box, and that will go down well with users, and the performance was generally good overall. Only thing I would change really is, would have liked a single remote solution. That definitely would have been useful to have, just the one remote, and also maybe a bit of extra RAM would have been useful. But overall, a nice little box, and quite a useful one at that. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll catch up with you in the next one.